Well, dear friends, more or less, we have all heard about the areas that when we talk about Lower Assam, Government of Assam talks about Baksa, Bajari, Borpeta, Bongaigaon, Sirang, Dhubri, then Kamrup, both rural and urban areas, Kukrazar, Gwalpara, Nalbari, South Salmara, Tamulpur. Essentially, these are some of the areas that constitute what we call the Lower Assam. Well, now if you look at the history of Lower Assam, what General Kolita was talking about, without giving a brief account of history, because that puts you in perspective how the things unfold. Well, Lower Assam was in 16th, 17th century was at the peak of Assam's power along with the Huns. Silarai, Naranarayan were two important stalwarts, and in fact this region, Lower Assam region, was the most epicenter, if I may say so, of the Ekharan Bhagavati Dharma, the religion propounded by Conclave and Madhavdev, and also Shakti Pit. So Bhakti and Shakti are two other important, areas of faith that the people of the region propounded in Lower Assam. And when we talk about the ethnic, assertions in the region, I would essentially talk about 4 or 5 ethnic assertions. Number one is the Bodo movement for separate Bodoland or separate state. Second is the Kush Rajbanki movement for scheduled tribes, and also they have a recurring demand about Kamatapur state. Then thirdly, the Rabha Hassan demand for autonomy, regularity and more power to the Rabha Hassan Autonomous Council. The fourth manifestation of the ethnic assertion is Adivasi communities' demand for scheduled tribes and greater constitutional powers. Now, this area, particularly from 90s, have become the epicenter for violence, displacement, and mutual hatred. What are those ethnic conflicts that we particularly see in the region from 1990s? Are again ethnic conflict in 1990s, largely between the Bodos and the Bengali speaking Muslims, the Bodos and Adivasis, and also Bodos and non-Bodos in certain areas of the region. Now, since the Bodo identity is the most important identity in the area and they call the source, let me give you a brief background how this Bodo identity has come to the present scenario. It goes back to the period of 1929 when Simon Commission visited Assam. At that point of time, the Kosari Association, under the leadership of Jadav Chandra Khaklari, demanded separate representation for Kosari in 1929. In 1933, the All Assam Tribal League was constituted, and there Bhimbo Deori and Rupnath Brahma and others propounded again the concept of separate representation. I'm just skipping most of the points. So Assam Tribal League at that point of time was the most important fulcrum for the articulation of the Bodo demand. Then came the Muslim League. Well, Muslim League under Soyed Sadullah had come into tactical alliance with the Tribal League for power sharing. But because of the land issues and immigration, Tribal League has snapped their ties with the Muslim League. And thanks to the initiative being taken by Gopinath Bordoloi from 47 to 1951, that some belts, 31 belts and blocks have been created for the tribal people covering about 50,000 square kilometers, basically to protect those land from encroachment by the immigrants. So that was the position taken by then Chief Minister known as Prime Minister, called Prime Minister by Gopinath Bordoloi on the eve of our independence. Now my next point is, if you look at the confrontation and the dissatisfaction of the Bodos are at the 3 levels. The first level of discontentment against domination by the Assamese caste Hindus, that is number one. Secondly, by the influx of immigrants from East Bengal, what I call EBOM. What is EBOM? Is East Bengal origin Muslims. And the third, confrontation with the Muslim people. So these are some of the 3 forms that Bodos try to fight. Now, who are the architect of Bodo movements? Bodo Sahitya Sabha, the PTCA, which is known as Plain Tribal Council of Assam, they had started an autonomous movement in 1967, and they popularized a new autonomous region, what they call Udayachal. It's a Sanskrit term, Udayachal, an union territory they demanded, and later on also Nilasal, along with the Rabas, they demanded. So I'm coming to the Assam Accord of 1975 that acted as a kind of, force multiplier for the Bodos, because the clause 6 of Assam Accord, that is about the constitutional safeguard and legislative protection for the Assamese people, became the core reference point for the Bodos, and they argued that if you could provide this kind of constitutional legislative protection for the Assamese, why not you provide the same kind of protection to the Bodos? Well, in 1987, the ASU demanded divide Assam 50-50, and they also talked about protection of their language and various identity-related issues. Then there was the onslaught of various attacks of violent movements in 1990s onwards, which went on and on till about 2013. I do not want to go into those issues, it will be time-consuming. Finally, there are three forms of peace accords with Bodos. 1993, Bodoland Autonomous Council. The second was, which is more, impact-making, was Bodoland Accord 2003, which was created under 6th schedule. And if I may say so, all other 6 schedules are in the hill areas. But for the first time, BJP government at that point of time created 6th schedule for the plain tribes for the first time with the Bodos. And 2020 is another milestone in the so far as decentralization of power to the Bodos are concerned. Well, Bodos do have a lot of confrontation with issues. Recently, there was problem with the Adivasis pertaining to some very minor issues, but it led to some major confrontation. So it suggests that there is relative peace rather than what I do not believe that there is permanent peace in the region. I would like to call it a relative or apekkik shanti. So Bodoland remains the fulcrum for the clash between the Bodos and the non-Bodos, as 70% of population belong to the non-Bodos. And Bodos have also rejected the ST demand by Coast Rajbongis and the Adivasis. This reflects the losing territorial autonomy by the Bodos in contrast to Coast Rajbongis and Adivasis, which comprise about 32 to 34% population in that Bodoland areas. Now I'm coming to some of the other ethnic issues in the lower Assam area, that is the Adivasis. Now these Adivasis groups were endangered laborers for tea plantation in Assam during the mid-19th century, and by British brought them from Bihar, Jharkhand and Odisha to work as tea garden workers. They claim themselves to be the Aboriginals and do not like to be called as the tea tribe, because they have this kind of uniformity with other tribes in Odisha, Bihar and other areas. The Adivasis largely remain trapped between institutional recognition. They also claim for more socio-political inclusion. Well, they are minorities within an autonomous minority region, and Adivasis in Bodoland have repeatedly faced ethnic violence in 1990s, rather infamous Bodo Adivasi clashes, then 1996, which led to violence and displacement. 1998, again another level of displacement and recurrent local conflicts. So Adivasis people are those group of marginalized section who face or confront continuous harassment and violence from the other communities. Now their main demand is the ST recognition, and they argue, and I quote, if we are scheduled tribes in Jharkhand and Odisha, why we are not scheduled tribes in Assam, unquote. So they have been demanding a ST status from 1960s onwards, and the state government of Assam has recently provided 3% job reservation in Group 3 and Group 4 sectors of jobs, but they are not satisfied with that, and they argue that welfare cannot substitute their constitutional claim. So by and large, these are some of the demands by the Adivasis people. And I'm coming to Coast Rajbongis, and Coast Rajbongis have great historical and their legacy of Kamotapur kingdom, as I say. In fact, they were the first to demand a separate state way back in 1955 in front of the State Reorganization Committee. And they are very peculiarly placed in various other states. They are called OBCs in Assam, Scheduled Caste in West Bengal, and ST in Meghalaya. So they have also major demand for ST recognition, and in between, Government of Assam in 96-97 declared them as ST, but however, this was somehow withdrawn later on. Now recently, Government of Assam had declared a layers of ST recognition to Coast Rajbongis, like they are to be recognized as ST plains in the undivided Goalpara region, but to be called as ST Valley in other areas of Assam. Interestingly, the Bodo groups like APSU and other dominant groups have opposed this demand of the Coast Rajbonghi people. And they still linger on the demand of Kamotapur state, combining Meghalaya, West Bengal, Bhutan, Bangladesh and Nepal. But this is not a very popular demand, and Government of Assam has negated this separate demand. And they too had violent manifestation in the form of Kamotapur Liberation Organization, which however did not last long. And recently, Government of Assam has declared autonomous council to Kamotapur, which more or less had satisfied their burgeoning demand. The Rabhas are another important, communities, ST people in the region, and they happen to be the third largest plain tribe people in the region. The largest being the Badus, the Missings, and after that, the Rabhas are the third largest plain tribe people in the region. Their fear is detribalization. Their fear is about the extinction of their language and land alienation. And they had demanded this, land of Nilachal along with Udayachal with the Badus. Later on, they had come away from the Badus demand and asked for their own autonomy. Particularly, they want the strengthening of Rabha Assam Autonomous Council, and they demand it to be recognized under the 6th schedule of the Constitution. Well, Rabhas have problem with the Garos, and we see in 2013, we visited many areas of Goalpara district when they had confronted with the Garos pertaining to resource allocation, pertaining to issues of religion. With the Garos, they had violent confrontation in 2012 and 2013. Now, the most important issue in Lower Assam that is coming as a major point is the question of Muslim factor. Now, as you know, I would call the Lower Assam is the epicenter of recent, if I may say, there is a transformation of Assam's politics. The Muslim factor was essentially an identity marker. The fear of being lost to a burgeoning expansion of Muslim population. That was an identity factor during Assam movement. But this fear of identity factor now has become a completely polarization. A process of polarization has started. It has its history. There is the fear of being taken away because Muslims constitute about 35% of the population, and there was report that by 2035 that Assam, it is going to be the major dominant force in Assam, as was said in the Homagna Hazarika Commission report. Well, I do not want to go into the details, but so far as Muslim mobilization is concerned, I see 6 phases of Muslim factor in Assam's politics, particularly emanating from Lower Assam. The first phase can be said to be the Muslim League phase till 1947. The second phase from 1947 to 75, where the Muslims felt secure within the secular framework of the constitution. The third phase was the phase of mobilization from 1975 to 1985. From fourth phase, being 1985 to 2005, and this is the phase of UMF phase. After the signing of Assam Accord, the Muslims formed a new political organization along with Bengali Hindus. It is known as United Muslim Minority Front, UMF. Then another phase of Muslim politics began from 2005 onwards. After the scrapping and the nullification of Identity Act, the AIDF has come to the forefront, and a more aggressive Muslim politics come to the forefront after 2005 with the advent of AIUDF. From 2016 onwards, I would like to call a phase of polarization and competition. Well, if you ask me, I can answer, but I would skip detailed analysis. Now, to analyze, there are three historical factors that have acted as an alienating point between the Muslim immigrants or the Muslim population minus the indigenous Muslim population vis-a-vis the indigenous population of the lower Assam region. The first is a structural cause. When the Britishers introduced policies like Assam Wasteland Rules of 1838, whereby the land was made open for other people to cultivate, and that led to the invitation of immigrant population from East Bengal. That is the first phase. The second phase is line system of 1920, where a line system was introduced with the Hakan Commission. Primarily objective was to protect the land of the indigenous people, but practically it ended up of settlement of immigrant population. That is the line system. The third factor is the Sadullah government, which introduced various policies like grow more food, which ultimately ended up what the Governor General said it to be grow more Muslims food. And line system, well, there were colonization scheme, I do not want to go into details. These policies actually invited the East Bengal origin Muslims to the area, and ultimately with mobilization of immigrant sizable population, then their next demand was political representation. Their next demand was constitution of a political party, and that was Muslim League. And the fourth phase was demand of Pakistan. Sadullah was one of the important votary of Pakistan demand. In fact, the last election in 1946 in Assam in pre-independence period, the central theme was whether Assam would be part of Pakistan or not. That was the central foci of electoral debate in 1946. Another person along with Sadullah who had emanated from Lower Assam is called Abdul Hamid Khan Bhasani. He is known as Maulana of Bhasani from Gwalpara region. He is a peer and one of the most important architects of East Bengal origin Muslims, organization from Lower Assam, and he was the most important leader of Muslim League. It was Bhasani, Maulana Bhasani, who had mobilized, and in fact, it was under his tutelage that Pakistan big demand became more prominent. And he, during time of India's independence struggle, he established Qilla in various parts of Lower Assam, in Gwalpara, in Dhuburi, in many other areas. In fact, I have detailed it out in my latest book on politics of CA and politics of history, how Muslim League was trying to mobilize people in Lower Assam. So the crux of my argument is, in the days to come, this Muslim area, somehow we cannot, because those who are Indians cannot be possibly alienated, but how you accommodate the Muslim politics and their interests will remain perhaps a simmering factor of conflict situation in the days to come. Well, to conclude, if you look at, there are certain policies, Lower Assam is the victim of colonial policies. What are those colonial policies? Colonial land policies, demographic transformation, ethnic mobilization, constitutional asymmetry, and struggle over indigeneity. These are some of the factors that confront these ethnic groups in the region. And some of issues are shared concerns, irrespective of the borders, irrespective of Koch Rajbonkis or Adivasis or the Rabhas. This shared problem or confrontation that they have with Indian state and with each other are the issues of land, identity, representation, and cultural survival. These are some of the factors that they combine in their interest articulation process. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is a politics of hope also. I hope with the recent coming of the present government, there is a relative peace in the region. I use the word relative peace. Why I can call it later on. There are four factors which are becoming very much a positive factor in the days to come. One is politics of inclusion and accommodation. Second is politics of recognition and representation. Third is politics of development. And last is macro level rainbow coalition. These are four factors. These are ushering a politics of hope in the Lower Assam region. Let me illustrate these points. Well, from 2003 to 2020, we have seen plethora of peace building exercises by Government of India and Assam, that now most of the insurgent leaders have joined the democratic process and now have started staking their claim for peace and development. This is a positive sign. Another sign is the accommodation of Muslim factors within BPF. I have recently, after getting your invitation, I was trying to look at the support base of BPF. At one point of time, Hagrama Mohilari was the most terror factor for Muslim population. It was under insurgent groups that series of violence took place against the Muslim population. But now, Hagrama Mohilari had given tickets to about 5 Muslim candidates in the last BPF election, and 3 have got elected. So now there is a gradual accommodation. A Muslim constitute 80% of the vote share. It is the second largest vote share in the region. So there is a politics of accommodation which is going on under BPF. So this gives us a new hope of politics in the days to come. Then secondly, the Coast Rajbongis, Adivasis and the Rajbongis and Rabhas also are more or less, I will use the word more or less, satisfied with the Autonomous and Development Council representation as enunciated by Government of Assam. And under the leadership of Himanta Biswa Sarma, lot of developmental activities have taken place. Bodoland today is a completely structure, it has changed. Look at the health care activities going on, developmental activities going on. And the most important issue is politics of rainbow coalition. This rainbow coalition of the present government has included all the forces within the macro level identity politics. Look at BPF, now is a part of present government. I mean, to be swearing ceremony is going to happen tomorrow. Hagrama is a part. UPPL, that has lost election, but is a part of rainbow coalition. The last CEO, Bodoland chief, is now being elected under the leadership of BJP government to Delhi. So UPPL is a part, BPF is a part, Ramas are the part of this grand coalition, the Badus are grand coalition partners, then Coast Rajbongis have been given autonomy and they are part of the government exercise. So my argument is that there is relative peace is ushering in the region, but only time can tell how much this kind of fragile peace would prevail. Now what is there in the region is what I would like to call negative peace. Well, when we studied conflict resolution in Berkeley, in California, University of California, Berkeley and Prio, we were told about 2 kinds of peace process. One is positive peace, one is negative peace. Let me begin with what is negative peace. Negative peace, as defined by Johan Galton, is the absence of violence. Now there is relative absence of violence, so we say the peace process is prevailing. But this is a hard-fought peace that we have got it. In order to get enduring peace process, or a kind of what I would like to call durable peace process, there is no concept called permanent peace. Permanent peace because people are in a contentious relationship. People actually define their relationship in a perpetual relationship with each other, which not necessarily may be a permanent one. So I would call a durable peace process is about development, health security, environmental security, structural reforms, gender justice, so on and so forth. So therefore, how much peace and security would prevail in Lower Assam would depend on how much inclusive this political process is. number one. Number two is equitable development. Development alone is not sufficient. It has to be equitable development so that it reaches to the last mile of the process of development. Then constitutional accommodation. India is one of the best example. And this is called the asymmetrical federalism. In the whole world, whether it is Pakistan, Bangladesh, African nations have settled. Their democracy is faltering from failure to other form of aggrandizement. But Indian democracy is a success because we have started a process of accommodation with various ethnic groups. That is why it is called asymmetrical federalism. And how we evolve, how we deal with the Muslim question in the days to come with increasing polarization will depend on durable peace process in the region. With these words, I conclude. Thank you.